Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome to the worst reviews ever. I got my man, the manic genius, in here.
Yo,
Amazing with the cool background, even though it's like a digital. We got KC Fred in here, always repping the Chiefs. So all right, Mason, you in another resort? You ain't get enough vacations.
Somebody got to work around this joint.
I'm, I'm gonna need you to come back and handle your responsibilities. This house been dirty while you've been gone. You need to step up to your role.
Somebody got to work. Somebody got to pay the bills.
Yeah, bring that money in. You get a raise out there. I need you to get a raise.
Oh man. Woo.
But all right, we'll go ahead
Rock
and
looking
let me.
kind of big.
What was that?
That Rock looking kind of big. She flexing right now.
Oh well, this is one of
She's
the
like,
many,
my
this is one of
water.
the many Super Bowl rings from the Chiefs. But, and one of the few, I got a couple. At least three. The last one is on back order, but it should be coming pretty soon. So yeah.
Do you wear those out and about, Fred?
Only on the safe streets. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You can't be rocking those. What's that? Prospect and Truth.
Yeah.
About there.
I just get my chicken to go on that. You know what I'm saying?
But all right, let's go ahead. Let me pull this slide up. So, Manic, if you go ahead and read this, I'll appreciate it.
Oh, got you. Unfrosted. Unfrosted is a 2024 American comedy film directed by Jerry Seinfeld and his featured directorial debut from a screenplay he co-wrote with his writing team of Spike Ferrstein, Barry Marder, and Andy Robin. In 1963, Michigan, business rivals Kellogg's and Post compete to create a cake that could change breakfast forever.
All right, I appreciate it. Let me go to the next slide. So I'll go ahead and do the directors and producers. So directed by Jerry Seinfeld, written by Jerry Seinfeld again, Spike Ferriston, Andy Robin, and Barry Marder. Produced by Jerry Seinfeld, Spike Fernstein, and Beau Bauman. Then the cast for this movie. All right, let me pull up my screen a little bit. Y'all know I'm getting old. So Jerry Seinfeld, he was starred as Bob Cabana, Melissa McCarthy as Donna Stankowski, Max Greenfield as Rick Ludwin, Hugh Grant as Thurl Ravenscroft, Amy Schumer as Marjorie Post, Peter Dinklage as Harry Friendly, Bill Burr as John F. Kennedy. Damn, I ain't even realized that was Bill Burr.
Yeah.
Dan Levy as Andy Warhol, James Martison as Jack LaLanne, and Jack McBrower as Steve Schwinn. So, all right, man, we about to get to the rating. I'm definitely interested what y'all rated this. So, we'll start at the bottom with Casey Fred. What you rate this movie?
I actually gave it like a 6.5.
Okay, so you in a good territory. Amazing. What did you rate this movie?
I gave it a generous 2.5.
Damn. So you guys did a terrible.
Oh my god!
All right, the manic genius.
I actually gave this one 4.5.
All right, so Manic got it in decent territory, and I had it at like a 4.7, which is in a decent territory. So amazing that for Casey Fred, the outliers. And the sad thing is, like, even though Fred's the highest, it's not that damn high.
Yeah, what was yours again, Fred?
6.5.
6.5. Okay.
All right, so we'll start with amazing on this one. Why'd you give it a terrible rating?
2.5.
Well, for one, over the top movies really aren't like my niche of movies anyways. But what I was excited about this movie is I did like several of the comedians that were like the top characters of the movie. So I really like Amy Schumer. I really like Stan's character. Jerry Seinfeld in general, I think he's okay, but I really like the female comedians for sure in different movies they've been in. And I just thought this was like a complete flop because it was like so corny and kind of over the top, where I was just like, this is so lame. So that's, I didn't even find like, I don't even know, like there might have been 1 to 2 times I potentially chuckled a little bit, but I literally downloaded this movie before my flight for work, and I had to pause it after 45 minutes, take a nap on the airplane, and then wake back up and finish it out. Because I was like, if I don't finish it on this long flight, there's no way I'm going to watch it by choice in my room.
Okay. Damn. All right, Casey, Fred, why'd you give it the highest rating, the 6.5?
I didn't realize I was going to be the highest rated, to be honest with you. I like all the comedians in there. I actually have probably out of I think there's about 8 of them in there. I probably have seen almost all of them, and for the most part, they got some very funny acts and everything, and so it was kind of a joy. The history as far as the '60s Kellogg's versus Post, that is real. And as far as all the different types of mascots out there, that was fun to watch too. Of course, I know this movie is way in the past. In fact, the 3 of you guys weren't even born, but it was.
Watch your mouth.
But it was cool to see, because a lot of these cereals I've actually have ate and enjoyed, and I've actually had Pop-Tarts. I didn't really think they were any good, but I mean, I would have been going back to the cereal, personally speaking, with the milk and everything. But no, I mean, just the little comedy and just the satire and these comedians coming together. I mean, I've seen it in Black movies all the time, but you don't see this many comedians, as far as white comedians for the most part, being able to come together like this. At least I haven't seen it in a very long time. So I thought it was kind of cool. It was light, and like I said, I gave it a 6.5 because it wasn't deep at all, but it was funny, and so for that's where I left it at.
All right, Manning Genius, why'd you give it a decent rating?
I give it a decent rating, just because the overall movie, it felt a little bit confusing. Like, I knew it was a comedy, but I kind of like, to Amazing's point, there were very few moments where I actually genuinely laughed, and I think it was just a movie of just a little bit of chuckles here and there, and the chuckles were not like, man, this is genuinely funny. It was just like, that's cute. I see what they're trying to do. And it just felt like it was all over the place. Obviously the storyline is competing against the two, but I think Jerry Seinfeld's age in this kind of really, overplayed his hand, like a star-studded cast, and like, this is the best product you got. And it's like, I felt like so many characters were underutilized. Andy Warhol character, Dan Levy, came in at the very end. Like, and he's in the credits. Like, what is even that all about? Like, yeah. So it just, the movie just felt like it was all over the place. It felt like, him getting a call to a lot of comedians, like, hey, I got this movie. It's going to be this. It's about this. I got this whole comedic spin on it. And then it just wasn't funny. So it's just like, I might not just be a fan of Jerry Steinfeld's type of comedy, but yeah. Now that I'm talking about it, I think I want to bump my rating down to like a 3.5.
Hey, but you know what? Seriously, now that you think about it, it does have that his number one show that he had. It did have that kind of feel in the movie, so you could tell Jerry's hand was all in it.
Yeah,
his show was funny though. I do like his show, but the reason why I rated it pretty much to echo the same thing as Amazing and Manic. Yeah, for a star-studded cast like this, man, they messed up, because like I like all the comedians.
yeah,
And it just was kind of out of place, especially when they brought in that group of individuals to try to help like the innovation, whatever, and stuff. So that just kind of made it corny, you know, Chef Boyardee and all that. So yeah, I didn't really understand that whole section. And I know we're gonna get deeper into it, like especially with the changes, because man, with this cast, I felt like you should have been dying laughing because I mean they're so hilarious. So I think if he was gonna go this route, he probably should have got like I'll say like regular actors because you know it's almost like you were disappointed when you see like some of the names. You're like, oh shit, you know, because when I started pulling it up, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch this. And when you watch it, you're like, damn, you know, it's like you're supposed to be expecting like some over the top comedy, or you know you're gonna be like dying laughing. And like I said, it was like some chuckles here and there, and then you know honestly, a lot of parts was pretty corny. You know, if you ask me, you know.
Yeah, facts.
Where I was kind of looking, I was like, I know we had to watch the movie because we're rating it, but I was like, I wouldn't mind like fast forward some parts, but I was like, no, I don't want to miss anything. But yeah, it was that type of caliber, you know, where you definitely wouldn't mind speeding some things up.
What did you rate it again?
4.7.
Okay. I want to make sure I was lower than you.
But all right, we'll go ahead. We'll jump into the questions. So, would you recommend this movie to anyone, and would you ever watch this movie again? And I'll start with Mason on this.
I wish I had my red thumbs with me because it would be double no. No, no.
What about you, Casey Fred?
Let me see. Actually, I've seen it once, so I don't need to see it again. So that would be a no. Would I let somebody else see it? I mean, if they wanted to, I guess I would say yes. So,
okay, okay. Manic.
I mean, it's definitely I wouldn't watch this movie again. I'll answer that one first. And as far as recommending this movie to anyone, I would recommend it to somebody if they're like in film to like, hey, if you want to know how to not make a film, watch this movie. That would be the only recommendation I'd give.
You want to set your audience up?
Yeah, I would. But hey, if you want to learn from a movie, watch this one. Like, it was just all over the place.
Yeah. Would I ever watch this again? No. And would I recommend this movie? Kind of along the lines of Manic. Like, say I was a movie producer and I was about to come out with a shitty film, I would manage everybody's expectations. I'd be like, hey, watch this first. Then after that, watch my movie. They were like, "Oh shit, that movie was fire! It was a lot better than what I thought." So yeah, they'll just like bump mine up just for after watching this. So yeah, that would be the only way I would recommend this movie, just to like bump up like my scores on my movie that are right. That would probably be shitty also, to be fair. But all right, we'll go ahead and jump into the third question. So, what did you think about the plot or the storyline of this movie? We'll start with you first, Manic Genius.
I thought the plot had a central theme of Post versus Kellogg's. So, I mean, Fred was kind of mentioning it in the beginning. Like, he was like, that was a real thing. You know, it was before my time. So, I couldn't really be tied to that. It's just like, I'm just watching a movie. Okay, Post versus Kellogg's. They both in the same town. Cool, got it. But the storyline was absolute garbage because it was just all over the place. It's like a competition between the two, and you think, okay, are they going to come out with a new cereal that they're going against? It's like, no, it's going to be this new product. And then they like show him still a Rice Krispie treat, and you just don't know where it goes. And they created like that stupid little ravioli thing that was just like so random, and it had no impact until like just had stupid little cameos, and they weren't even funny. So yeah, and the dude who created the bicycle, Swin, it's like he was so random. The computer wasn't funny. Like it was just them trying to throw, oh man, we're gonna add this and we're gonna have this and all the random stuff, and we're gonna somehow tie it together. And I think, you know, some people are great at things. And I think Jerry Steinfeld, his comedy, I guess, speaks for itself, and his show was very successful. But that was like that generation. Like, this new generation is coming a lot stronger with heat, and talent is really based off of like everybody has access to a camera, and everybody, you know, can be funny. It's not just like, oh, who you know, and you know, all the comedy gets thrown to like the top people who have the face. So I think, I mean, it kind of just really showcased that, you know, either he's lost it or he really was never really that funny, and that the writers kind of directed uh, a lot of his content that he gets credit for. But like, the storyline was trash. uh, yeah, in summary, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, I'll go ahead jump in next. So I thought the plot, I kind of like what Fred said. I like the historical reference because when I looked it up, I was like, damn, that is pretty interesting. Well, like Manic said, the storyline, I think that whole group that they wedged in, I think that just like threw it off. You know, like he was saying with the ravioli and these out of place people that just didn't even fit in the industry. I just thought that was stupid. Overall, it just kind of messed up the flow and stuff. And Jerry Seinfeld, like I think he's a good TV show writer, and I think sometimes people, if they have those hits, I think sometimes they feel like they could do anything. And I thought, they probably took this storyline and thought they could like wedge some comedy, like, hey man, let's pack it up, and then. But it's just like you got to have the right writers for something like this, and I just think like putting all those people into the movie just kind of killed the expectations because you're just expecting so much from like Amy Schumer, and you got all these like comedy heavyweights and stuff. So yeah, the storyline, like I said, I do like the Kellogg's and Post competition, being in the same city and how they competed and stuff. But I kind of think they definitely missed the opportunity because you kind of knew how the story played out anyways. So I think like, and I'll kind of get into it when we do the change or what you should have done differently. I think they should have like probably used like different companies, like something else, and I'll kind of expand on that. But yeah, I just think the storyline was honestly just terrible. So we'll go ahead, go to Amazing. What did you think about the plot of the storyline?
Honestly, it's just like an echo of what you guys said. That I did like the plot. I like that it was a true story. The story, I agree, the storyline was awful, and it was just like a huge setup where, like, again, you have all of these like top tier comedians, but it was just so over the top and corny that it just ruined everything. And there were so many random parts, from like you guys said, the weird ravioli to people that had nothing to do with the food business. Where I think, especially with that cast, they probably, I mean, because I'm sure if you think about back then, that they're probably really, they probably really did have like different spies working for each other, trying to figure out what was going on. Like, I think they probably could have incorporated real life scenarios from then. It's not like it was that long ago. And with that cast, actually made it funny versus just be completely random corny.
I agree with you on that. All right, Casey, Fred.
So I almost feel like
you could drop that score.
This peer pressure. I feel like this, but I do feel like, just if on a serious note, I do feel like this movie should have came out like in the 70s or in the 80s, not in 2023. Most people don't, especially the kids of this generation, don't know the history back from the 60s. They don't know that was, John F. Kennedy, they didn't know that Friendly, the milk company, was a real company. And like I said, they serve milk all over. They didn't know about the Cuban crisis and all, and dealing with Russia back then and all this stuff. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I do feel like it did fall flat as far as the storyline is concerned. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why they had all these heavy hitters. Because if you remember correctly, we had the guy, I can't remember his name, but he was also in House of Dragons, the little short dude.
And Peter, I forgot his last name, but excellent actor. Yeah, my man on Game of Thrones.
Awesome at what he does. But I felt like they had to bring in people like him because the storyline really was kind of flat as far as that was concerned. But as far as history is concerned, and teaching you, well, if you know came from the 70s, the 60s, the 80s, or at the latest, I would say the 90s, then you would be familiar with all the history of what was going on. And so you would kind of relate and you was like, hey, yeah, I remember that. But once you hit 2000 and then you got 2010 and 2020, now 2023, 24, none of these kids were reading that stuff in history books, just being honest with you. We're in a digital world and they're not looking that stuff up. They're just like, why are we talking about this? And most of the movies that they watch are going into the future. They're not going into the past. So a lot of this they can't even relate to. And I felt like that's where they fell flat because they weren't able to capture the audience of everyone, but just the audience of those that actually remember the 60s and remember the companies and all the stuff, the headlines, the political view, like Cronkite. I mean, the guy that was on the news. I mean, that guy was a legend. And yet at the end of the day, as far as news is concerned, I mean, he's won all kinds of Academy Awards and everything. But the new generation don't know that. In fact, Walter Cronkite's already passed. So a lot of the young people wouldn't even know who he is. So that's just a good example of me saying that basically it fell flat because I don't feel like they were able to capture the audience of 60 years later of you finally putting this movie out. If you would have put it out in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you would have been able to have everybody's attention. And I'm pretty sure there would be actually more laughs in the movie theater. But thank God we didn't waste any money. We just watched it on Netflix. So it was.
No, that's a good point, Fred. I just think they put too much stuff into the timeline. Mm-hmm. Where it's like it's supposed to be the competition, and like you said, they had too many things. Because like you said, I definitely grew up on a lot of them serials too. So like, I think that was pretty cool how they kind of showed some of that. But I just think the storyline was just a little out of place. But I agree with what you was kind of talking about. Yeah, I think it should have definitely came out earlier. But we'll go ahead and jump into the what scenes and performances stuck out, if any did. All right, we'll start with you first, Casey, Fred.
You know what? I love all the cameos. You know, like how they had Johnny Carson. I thought that was pretty cool, and just Walter Cronkite, he was in there. I love all the mascots that was in there as well. I love how they Jerry Seinfeld had to go and get Melissa McCarthy, who played her name was Donna, but they all called her Stan. And so he goes over there to catch her and it was like, hey, are you really going to the moon? Come on, come back with me. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing, which everybody knows, you know, about the moon and all that fiasco and everything. So, I mean, I just little stuff like that I thought was really cool. As far as the milk situation and having Christian Slater, man, I hadn't seen him in years as far as doing the movie. So it was kind of cool to see him do a cameo. And, you know, and everybody was like, hey, you better look out for the milkman. You know, that was always a big thing back in the day. So, I mean, it was just different cameos all throughout the movie. I think what was the dude, that played the muscle fit dude that he was on X-Men or something like that.
Yeah, James Marsden or something like that.
So, I mean, it was like cool to see him. And then, of course, like I said, all the comedians and Amy Schumer and all them, it was fun to be able to see them in a movie. It just seems like it wasn't supposed to be this movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like if all of them would have came together and did a 2024 movie, oh, it would have been slamming. But the simple fact that you're trying to go back into the past and have those same guys to try to be comedians when half of those people weren't even born back then, I just felt like it felt flat and wasn't really genuine. So in that sense, it was just like those were the only ones that stood out. And then, of course, I did love Hugh Grant, who's from England, but yet at the same time, he was playing Tony the Tiger, like he was American and stuff. So I just thought all that stuff was funny to me. And then, of course, them trying to get more sugar and where, you know, act like they was on a Mission Impossible trying to go all the way down to Cuba and all this other stuff. I thought that was cool. And then Post trying to go to Russia and then talk to, you know, the guy that was in charge over there. All these people and all these figures were basically from the 60s. So it's almost like I said before, if you didn't know the 60s and the political realm and what was really going back then, and then like even the mascots protesting, there was all these protesters going on back in the 60s. And so it was like they always kept making hints and references to that era, to that basically that decade. And so it was like even some of the songs, they were all from the 60s. And so it's like if you didn't really know that era, then you was really lost and you was like, man, this movie is trash. So I kind of understand where you guys are coming from. But yeah, like I said, it was lighthearted and I enjoyed it. And it had no gore, Amy. So, you know.
Oh, so we'll Casey Fred done boosted it up just because of the past horror movies. I see what you did. You gave it a
and the last one I gave it a 1, so you know I had to go ahead and step up.
You went up a little. Okay, I got you. But all right, amazing. What scenes or performances stuck out?
So I think, Fred, you made a ton of good points. Those were actually honestly the reason that I gave it as high as I did, because I first of all, I love 60s. Like, I love the 60s clothes, I like 60s music, and I remembered all that stuff. Like, when I was little, we had the milkman came to our house like a couple times a week. He'd come with his like glass jugs, leave them out. Once we were done with them, we'd have to clean them out, put them back. We always had Frosted Flakes, no matter what, in our house. That was a favorite. And so even like, you know, when they would do different scenes, like the comics on the back of the cereal boxes. I mean, you would go get cereal boxes literally depending on what the comic was or what surprise was in that bottom of the bag. And then you literally would fight if you had siblings to see who was going to get that cheap prize at the bottom of the bag. So those are actually the only parts I enjoyed about the movie. Like, I think there was a reference to Cabbage Patch, and I had all the Cabbage Patch dolls. So like those are like the only pieces I liked of the movie, are those pieces that like kind of went back memory lane. So right, those are the scenes I liked. I didn't, as far as performances goes, I thought everybody was terrible.
Damn. All right, the man in genius. What scenes or performances stuck out?
I'm gonna go to probably the funniest scenes first, because I had to think really hard when Amazing was saying, like, there was parts where I chuckled. I was like, did I even laugh at all? This was a comedy, and I had to think, and I did laugh. There were points where I did laugh, like chuckled. Definitely the part where they had the camera and the mop, and like it's so obvious, and then he's just like, he's like, oh, we got to make sure we have somebody not spying over here too. He's like, oh, I would never. We have 2. I doubled the security. Now we have 2 security guards. It's like, it just shows that time period, like where security really wasn't a big deal back then, because you know, people didn't do as crazy things as they do now. But like the dude came in there, like, he's like, hey, could you cut that off? And he's got like a big obvious camera attached to it, and they're like, oh, there can't be no spies here, and he's like super obvious with it. So I thought that was funny. So I did chuckle there. And then Bill Burr, the president. I knew I liked the guy, and I didn't recognize it. I didn't realize it was Bill Burr either until like at the very end, when they showed, like, before they said his name, they just showed him at the end. And I was like, that's Bill Burr. And I was like, I knew I liked his style of comedy. So you could tell he definitely had his input in his writing, because he was like talking fast as the president. He's like, yeah. You know, like referencing like the incidents of Marilyn Monroe and that whole incident scandal. So, and it's like, oh, the Doberman twins are coming up next.
Yeah.
So they got an appointment. And then it's just like, and then they end up pregnant with twins, and he's just like, so it's just like he really played into that character. So that was funny. Yeah, so those, and I disagree with amazing on this one. I think most of the actors did an excellent job. Um, I just think the script was just not great. Because even Amy Schumer's character, and I actually do like her, and I was very impressed with her role in this movie because she was very limited and she stayed in that limit. She didn't try to do their whole like, oh, I'm Amy Schumer, I'm gonna bring my own comedy to this. Like she literally played a role, and that kind of like speaks on her acting ability versus Melissa McCarthy. Um, she always plays like the same character. So it's just like it was cool because she did have her funny elements, but it's just like, can she really act? Or is she just playing herself in every movie, which is fine, but Amy Schumer played a role, and I was like actually impressed. Like, oh, she's actually an actor or actress. Like she can do comedy, she can do her own thing, but she can also be put in real films because she stayed in the character and her character didn't change. Um, I'm always critical on the kids, so the kids acting was trash, completely garbage. I'm like, those kids have to be somebody's, children because their acting ability was really, really bad. It was just like it was super obvious. I mean, they didn't mess up their lines. They were like really on point, but it just was not much believable about them other than that. Like they were definitely reading from a script. It was like, this is don't hire your kids or your friends' kids. Like get how he should have hired real child actors because it just kind of like you have this star-studded cast of comedians and actors, and then you just have these bullshit kids in there. So
Yeah, but don't you think they kind of just like, because I do think you made a good point about the performances, but I feel like the kids were just in alignment with being terrible. Like it
yeah,
might have been the script, but I felt like you wouldn't even know if they were actually terrible or they were
if the
acting
script was
terrible
just
for the
terrible.
script.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's where the director has to come in and be like, oh, we're gonna redo that scene. You hit the definition because there was like one point it's like, do you even know what this is? And then she spits the perfect definition. And like that scene was fine and perfect. But like every other time when they're talking, it's just like they were just so over the top. And it was just like it wasn't even over the top. It was just like this is super corny. Like this is like
Yeah, that was the script though. That's why
yeah,
I
yeah.
agree with Amazing because yeah,
Oh, okay.
they just made them kids awkward as hell, like you're saying.
Yeah, okay, okay. Well yeah. I didn't like it. This is probably one of the worst kid acting that we've like did today. This definitely goes in like the top 5 of all the movies we reviewed.
Okay, okay. So for me, the scenes and performances that stuck out, I definitely liked some of Amy Schumer's parts. I like what you said, Manic. Those were the times like I chuckled when she was in Russia and my man was like, "Oh, you're gonna have to sleep with him." She was, and the guy that did the Russian thing, because he was the cop on Breaking Bad. I think I liked his role. I thought that was pretty funny and stuff. And then, like you said, Bill Burr, he's like one of my favorite comedians, so I definitely liked his role. But yeah, those were probably the only performances I would say that I actually liked out of the whole thing. So I think they definitely held it down. And then I can't gig everybody because you guys made a good point. It was just like the whole I say the script was just bad. But all right, we'll go ahead. We'll jump into if you were the director or producer of the movie, what would you change or do differently? And I'll start with myself on this. I think the change I would have made on this, I think they should have instead of starting at the end where they're creating a Pop-Tart after they already created all the cereals and stuff. They should have started from the beginning when the companies like started up. I think if they would have started off with that time period, because think about it, they would have had all them cereals that they were like the true competition versus like just a Pop-Tart. I think, and they would have had to probably do as too much I say comedy in there. It could have been more or less like just focused on the competition, them kicking out the products and stuff, that whole build up. So I think they just did the wrong like timeline, the back end of it versus like the actual how they started coming up with these different, the cornflakes and everything. I think that was the first cereal and stuff when I was looking at it, how they came with the ingredients and then, they could have been doing like espionage, hiring each other's people. then it could have been more serious. You know, what was that one medical movie where it was based on a true story where, you know, they was like selling all those Captain America was in it. But I think if they would have did something like that, a little more serious, but you could have had like the humor there, and you could have had like, because they had some great cat actors like Casey Fred mentioned. You know, they could have showed how the milk industry tied into everything and how it all started up, and then, you know, made it a drama, but it has some like comedy at timely comedy and stuff. So I think that would have been way better than versus like just go focus on the Pop-Tart, you know, and then, you know, add all these like random you know, history events in there. It could have just been focused on the build up, the competition, and how they became like both these like Fortune 500 companies and stuff at the very beginning. So that would be my change. And I'll kick it over to Manning Genius on that.
Oh, yeah, I like what you said with the build up. And I definitely agree. The first thing I would have took out was I would have took out that weird genius all star squad, because it didn't provide, you know, really anything to the that could have been like 30 minutes of just interchanging and tying those people in because they just weren't funny. Um, and obviously that wasn't a shot to them. That was just the script. The script just made it not funny. It made it really cheesy and corny and like over the top and unnecessary. And I didn't even chuckle on any of those scenes where they were involved. So I would have scrapped that whole piece and then use that time element to do pretty much the same thing that you were saying, Jerk, as far as build up the story. Because like Casey Fred and even Amazing mentioned, like remember growing up with the Milkman, and that's just something that I mean I never grew up with, but I do know of it just from watching older films. I think they could have spent that time doing that build up, like started the movie off as back in 19 this, you know, Kellogg's came, then Post came. They're in the same city, you know, they were one company and they separated, and then, you know, different alliances were formed, and like that could have been literally been the first 5 to 10 minutes of it, and they could have like spent some comedy in there, but just like giving us a history lesson to like put us there, and then they could have, you know, went back to the story about the Pop Tart. Like, 'cause if this is just a story about the Pop Tart, that's cool. I'm all with that, but give us some details and background of the different dynamics. And I would even spun in there, hey, this is a story that explains, and I probably would have just laid it all out. This explains the Russian Cuban Missile Crisis, and I would have threw in some like real articles in there, and then kind of did like a Forrest Gump type thing, but I would have sprinkled
Ooh,
it with actual like historical references, like because I mean I didn't know that I guess this was the Cuban Missile Crisis around this
yeah.
time. Yeah, so like they should have highlighted that and like gave like not highlighted, like foreshadowed the Cuban Missile Crisis, the issue with the Russians and nuclear war, you know, highlighted John F. Kennedy, like highlighted all the things that they're going to talk about just to kind of give us like a background. Oh, this is the time period. This is all these things that's going on and we're about to see why. And then make it about a Pop Tart. Like that would have been funny.
All right. Let me go to Amazing. What would you change or do differently?
Um, I literally think the whole movie needs to be scrapped. So the only thing I could think of, the only thing I could think of is to make it less disappointing prior to watching is like you had mentioned earlier, maybe don't have a star-studded cast because then you'd be like, oh yeah, this just stinks versus like being hype, like, oh yeah, this is probably gonna be great. And then it's like a huge letdown.
All right. We'll go to Casey Fred on this.
I think kind of like what I was making reference to, if they would have put this movie out back in the 70s or the 80s, those audiences would have appreciated this movie a little bit more. Of course, kind of like saying what you guys are saying, if you would have did that, none of these three-fourths of these people would have not even been alive. But at the end of the day, getting back to what you guys were saying, the historical references, because you could tell all this was 60s. Like even the TV, if you notice, the TV was always black and white because there was no color. So with that being said, it was just like the people, the characters, they were all from that time frame. So at the end of the day, people had, in order for you to be able to show this type of movie and make these kind of references, people would have to either A, know the history or live through that decade. And so if you had the movie out in the 70s or if you had it in the 80s, at the latest 90s. But after that, this movie shouldn't have never even came to existence. But once again, when you got somebody like Jerry, who's like 70 something, well, this movie is 60 years ago as far as real lifetime. So he lived through that moment. But the rest of the characters and the comedians in there, three-fourths of them have no idea. They're just reading the script. And so they're trying their best to be able to do the best that they can. But the reality is, um, they were just average at best, just trying to pull off because they weren't there in that moment. They weren't feeling it. I mean, back in the day, TV literally went off. There was no 24-hour TV. It was at the end, I would believe, right around about midnight, and they would play the national anthem, and there would be a flag waving, and then the TV would literally shut off. And so it's just like it's a different time frame.
Fred
It's
old as shit.
to
Fred old as shit.
uh,
I was like, Fred old as shit. Nah, that I was just telling somebody the other day. I was like, man, like, yeah, like you said, it wasn't like a 24-hour cycle.
but
I
I
remember
mean,
that.
but like I said, I mean, I getting back to what Manic was saying, as far as the historical facts and really teaching people. I know you guys always dog on me about, but this really probably would have been better if it would have been a mini series because then you really could have all hit all those.
Bro. No, I can't agree. We gotta shut that off. No mini series with
Hey,
this.
hey,
He did
I
this bad
didn't,
of a
I didn't,
movie.
I want no
hey,
parts.
at
This should
least
have been a
four, at least
documentary,
put
a
about
30-minute
four of them
documentary.
to be short. You know what I mean? To be real short, but about four of
Mm-mm.
them together, something
Nope.
like that, a little short mini series, and then you can hit all those factors. But for most of the time, I have to admit, and you guys can be honest with me, I think most of the time you guys were lost because there were so many historical facts from the 60s.
No, you're
You
right.
didn't know all of them. I guarantee you didn't know all of them. You know what I'm saying? So unless you actually looked it up, uh, I mean, back then they had encyclopedias and stuff, which showed you all this stuff. But most kids don't know none of that stuff, especially when it comes to history. And this was definitely a history movie. So,
No,
but
I don't think it's the fact of being lost. I just think, man, it was a bad script. Because, like I said, even if they would have just focused on the competition, in the beginning, and didn't put all that weird stuff, I think it would have connected. I think a lot of people do like old history. Because I mean, like a lot of the cereals are still on the shelves, so it's like you could make that connection with it. But it's just like they just focus on the Pop-Tart, which everybody, is still out there and stuff. Hell, I still buy them, but yeah, I just think they picked the wrong the time and the history of the two companies where it just wasn't interesting. So I think that was the disconnect because. Like you said, the historical events. I went back when I was looking at it. I was like, damn, I didn't realize like like you said, was in a same town. So there had to be some they had to know each other,
right.
or maybe like they all were working with each other and it was like, you know what, I'm gonna, kind of split off and do my own company. So I think that would have been the story to capture. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just think the Pop-Tart thing I don't think there was much of a storyline really where that's where they had to like create all the like crazy stuff to fill that gap where I think the original storyline is just because they were coming out with product after product. That's when marketing was like at its peak, and with all the advertisements. Because I know you remember, Fred, with all the like cereal advertisements, Rice Krispie
Right.
Pops, and all those, the cartoons the commercials was out. So I mean,
Right.
man, they could have focused on that whole era, man. Because like you said, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did like the way they did the award show at the beginning and how Kellogg was racking them up. And it would have been kind of cool if they would have been showing more people that had lost, not just hosts, and you kind of knew who these people were. Because a lot of them, the mascots that showed up, if you didn't know that time frame, you didn't know who they was related to as they was trying to bust in and climb the building and trying to get in as they was protesting and everything. But I mean, it was, I don't know, it was a lot of history right there. So it was just like, it was cool if you knew the era. I just felt like it fell flat because of the audience that was
Yeah.
looking at it.
Yeah, terrible writing. Nah, that's a good assessment. Yeah, because I like I said, I like history, so I went back and I started looking at it. But yeah, it was just they merged everything in there and just it was so random where you couldn't really focus on any of it. So I think that's what messed it up. But all right, going to the last thing. So now that you heard other perspectives, would you change your score or keep it the same? So let me pull up the scale again. We'll start with Casey Fred. Casey Fred, you staying the same? Or are you going up or down?
I mean, usually I always just stick with what I got. So to be honest with you, being that if it wasn't, let's put it like this, I think if it wasn't for the cast, because all these comedians, you got to give it to them that at least they tried. So I do believe on what you guys were talking about with the script, but all these guys, they at least try to give it their best effort. So I'm probably just going to stay the same and stick with that
Okay.
6.5.
All right, amazing. You're already at a extremely low rating. You going up? You going up, down, or you stay the same?
I actually had planned on probably going down. The only reason I'm going to go ahead and stay the same is because I think Manic made a good point that it maybe wasn't necessarily their fault. Actually, I'm still going to go to 2.1. I feel like they're rich enough. They have enough money. They should have declined. They know that.
Yeah.
Accountability. Hold them accountable. Amazing.
Bad discernment.
2.1.
All right, the man of genius.
So I
Are you
originally had
going?
this as like a 3.5. No, I had it as a 4.5, and I was like, oh, I need to bump this down to a 3.5. But hearing everybody speak, I think I'm just gonna move it from a 4.5 decent to just a solid, bad at like a 4.
Okay. I'm at a 4.7. I'm gonna bump it down to like a 4.1. Where it still was decent enough because like I like the history element. I'm like what Fred was saying because
Yeah.
but it was just too over the top. So I can't go all the way back down to bad because I do like the history and the familiar whatever it is. I'm familiar with all the cereals and stuff. So it's just like that. I like that connection, but yeah, no, definitely it's kind of bad. Nah, I gotta go down to 3.9.
I think
I try to. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah. For me, I was really like a 3.5. Like I'm going down by a whole point, and then like Fred made interesting points as far as like, this movie was probably a movie that Jerry Seinfeld, he grew up in this time period, so it's like everything's like fun. Oh, this will be a funny thing. We're gonna put a spin on it. Like, so when it comes to recommending this movie, I would recommend this movie to people who want to know how to make a bad film, but I also would recommend it to like people who are older, just to see if they come to the same conclusion because I don't have that historical background in this. A lot of things probably did go over my head, and with any movie, it shouldn't ever go over your head because a movie should capture and explain everything. Especially like Casey Fred said, like if this was like the 80s and this movie came out, then yeah, you don't need to do too much explaining because it's very relevant. But this is 2024 and they're capturing the 60s. You have to explain everything because the people didn't grow up in that time period. So yeah, that's why I, stay at the 4 and didn't go to the full 3.5.
But you made a good reference with the Forrest Gump, how they had the history, and that was a classic. And it's just like, man, I'll be watching old school movies, Saving Private Ryan, Braveheart. This man, that's what I'm telling you. It's not the historical piece, man, because it was just badly written. So I think if you sent it to some old people, they'll probably look at you sideways, like, "Why did you do that?"
Yeah,
my time is valuable.
Right. My time is valuable. What's left of my time is even more valuable. Yeah,
like man, wasted this hour. I only got like so many left. They gonna be looking at you like, man. But I do want to test that out. I might some older people, I might have to get them to watch this. They're gonna be like, yeah, they gonna cuss us out.
Hey, we'll find somebody old.
All right, we'll go ahead and give the parting words, and we'll close this one out. So we'll start with you, Amazing.
I have nothing. Have a good week, everybody. Do not watch that movie.
Do not watch that.
Damn.
You winning some money out there?
I haven't even gambled at all.
Loser. Type of loser goes to the city of sin and don't gamble.
The kind that has to get up early to go to work.
Don't forget your responsibilities when you come back. All right, Casey, Fred, parting words.
Well, I mean, I do agree with you guys in the sense of if you are going to watch this movie, grab an old person, sit down with them, and let them laugh, because you probably won't laugh at it if you're a younger person. And if you don't like history, then definitely don't watch this movie. But if you do like history and you like these comedians, yeah, overlook this movie, because at least you realize everyone it has one flop in their life. But yeah. Other than that, I mean, like I said, I appreciate the effort. That's the key on everything. They at least tried, and a lot of people don't even know the story about Pop-Tarts and how they all came to be. So like I said, at least they gave an effort. So you got to give them that, because other than that, we probably would have gave them all 0. So yeah,
probably should have went a little. Nah. All right, Manic Genius.
Yeah, not a great movie. Plot was cool. Storyline was trash. Yeah, it was just really bad. He tried to do too much, and put too much in, and just too many random elements that weren't funny at all. I did like the milkmen, like that whole element of like they were like the mob and stuff like that. I thought that was a clever play, and I felt like the timing of that was really good. So that is an element that I liked, and I did like the when it kept going to that news anchor who's dropping news of the time. You could tell obviously he's having troubles at home. He's like, I drink all of the whatchamacallit, all the alcohol because I pay all the bills. Like it's just like he like starts off saying like subtle things like, oh, okay, maybe he's not doing that great at the house. And then like at the end of the movie, he's like, full blown, like you can see he has marital issues. So that part was funny. But yeah, other than that, and I think like generally the cast was pretty good. They played their roles. It's just that the roles were written bad. I think Jerry Seinfeld's character was real cool. Like he was like consistent all the way through, which is kind of shitty. It's like I'm gonna get all these top comedians and I'm gonna give them I'm gonna give them shitty scripts, but I'll make sure my script is cool. So it'll just kind of like, no one's gonna outperform me. I'm gonna make sure of it because I directed it.
My parting words. This movie was about, well, just the whole setup for this was get you a genuine friend. And what I mean by that is like you need that friend that's gonna like tell you like don't put that shit out. And I don't know if Jerry has like a good friend in his corner that could like, he's not a yes man. He's like, hey man, that's trash. Jerry, you're a legend, because he's a legend. Don't put that out and tarnish your like
reputation,
director capabilities, because man, it's like that Tom Cruise movie, that one we rated that you all had wrong and said it was a classic. It was definitely very good, but Tom Hanks was like, I'm writing that. My bad. It was Tom Hanks.
A Man Named Otto.
Yeah, A Man Named Otto. So he put his name on something. He was like, I'm getting a banger. Jerry, you got to be a little more selective, but get somebody in your corner, people. Don't just pump out a project. Don't try to like fill it up with a bunch of stars, because if it's a dud, it's a dud. And it's even going to be more of a dud if you have like that type of cast. Because Cedric the Entertainer was in there. You remember the cameo?
Yeah.
He had him, like all the people that was in there. So yeah. So get you a friend, people. And don't surround yourself with yes men, because this is what happens when you do that. Everybody's too scared to be like, oh, this is pretty decent. They probably like as soon as Jerry left, they're like, oh shit. I didn't have the heart to tell him. I didn't have the heart to tell him. But yeah, so that's my part of words. Yeah. Get you somebody that can tell you like that's trash. But all right, we out of here. Keep tuning in, keep sending us recommendations. Peace.